Good morning, Illini, and it is Healthy Illini Podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, as always, Matt Schrock, and we are into the spring semester. 2023 is underway, and it's going to fly by before we know it. But it's good to be back and talk with you. It's good to be back on campus with the students and all the energy that's been going around the last few weeks. And I'm just really excited to see everybody back here. But we do have a topic today that we're talking about that is very pertinent to our world, to anyone, anywhere, but especially college students. So I'm really excited to talk about it, and let's jump right in. Today I'm joined again by our guest, Lauren Bocek. She is a licensed clinical social worker here at McKinley. She's been on the episode before, back at the beginning. And so, Lauren, we appreciate you coming back and being a part of this again. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Today we're talking specifically about social media, and that's why I say it pertains to all of our students. It pertains to all of us, really, in the world we live in. It's very, very difficult to get away from social media completely. But we want to talk about the idea of social media and the impact it has on our mental health. And we will talk a little bit about that, the negative aspect of the negative possibility of social media. But before we get in, I do want to be clear that we're not coming in on some sort of soapbox of all social media is bad, social media is evil, because like I use social media. I know, Lauren, we're talking, you use social media. It's enhanced a lot of my life in a lot of ways. I've been able to reconnect with friends from college when it used to be, when I was in college, you got done, you waved to everybody and said, have a nice life. And you kind of went on because we didn't have Facebook. I didn't have a cell phone when I graduated, I mean, they're just, you were connected in those ways. And now I've been able to reconnect because of it. And I've come back and I've gotten to see some friends and their families and their lives and their journeys and things like that. I've been able to attend events all across the country and around the world, been able to travel and meet friends who now live abroad because of the connection that we've been able to make through social media. And this podcast is built on social media tenets. We use Instagram, we use the platforms, we use all these things to benefit our listening audience. And so it's not all bad, but we are going to talk about some of the balance and that there is a possibility for some negativity that can come through that. And so the first thing I want to do is just hit real quick on the idea of social media and kind of how it's designed and how we interact with it, because that really plays a lot into how we need to address it in our lives. So, Lauren, if we can start with that, I know you had a little bit in your prep work. What is some of that design and how it specifically targets our minds and our mental health?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Yeah, so I refer to that quite regularly because they lay out pretty nicely, some execs in the tech world for a lot of the platforms, from anywhere from Pinterest to Twitter, were involved in designing and developing these platforms that are basically based on the concept of intermittent reinforcement, which is a behavioral concept that is well known and well founded of how we shape our behavior. And it's intermittent reinforcement happens to be the most powerful way that we have as humans to shape our behavior.
And one of the things that goes with that, just in some general terms, is that we have to remember also that social media is a business. There's really not an app out there that doesn't have some sort of business aspect to it. They have to have funding, they have to have development and research and things like that. And in order to get that business, they need to keep our attention. It's just like any kind of advertising that goes for anybody. I mean, we do here at Healthy Illini, we want to keep your attention so you come back and listen more. And that you listen to the things that we're bringing because we think they're valuable. But because of that, social media is designed to draw you back in, is designed to fight for the minutes in our day. Everyone has a finite number of minutes that we have in each day, and we choose how we want to spend them and what we focus on, what we prioritize. And again, that's not negative necessarily. It's just you have to choose what you're going to do. When I get home from work today, I have kids waiting for me. I have housework waiting for me. I'm tired. So I have all these things that I'm going to have to decide, what am I doing today, and how am I going to prioritize? And social media plays a part in that. That it's trying that every platform and app is trying to draw your attention for one reason or another. And so that is kind of where it starts with the idea of how it affects our mental health. That it does draw us in. It tries to draw us back. And that's, again, not neither positive nor negative. That's just a fact of how it is.
That's exactly right.
And then you did say something interesting in the prep, that social media can create a need for that dopamine fix, that feeling of whether it be relaxation or excitement or comfort or whatever it may be. It draws into that same fix, just like physical substances or emotional behaviors. And with any kind of fix like that, eventually you need a little bit more, you need a little bit more, you need a little bit more if you're not careful with it. So that's another aspect as far as how social media is designed, that it is drawing us in for more and more interaction.
Yes.
So let's, before we get into some of the balance ideas at the end, I do want to talk about some of the negative aspects that can be with social media. Again, this is not an absolute, this is not it's only negative, but we do want to address that there is a potential for something negative to come out of it. And we talked about it because that fix can be addictive. And that's one thing that's dangerous about social media, is that it can be addictive, very similar to any other substance or behavior or activity that we can talk about. It can be that addictive thing. So just what are some of those negative consequences or mental health problems that are most commonly associated with social media addiction?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the way I typically frame it with the students who I work with is, I ask everybody, what's your relationship like with social media? Because it's not so much about, are you using social media or are you not using social media? But it's what is your relationship to it? How is it impacting you? How, what role does it play in your life? How are you, how does it make you feel? And there, like you were mentioning earlier, there's a lot of great benefits to it in terms of connectivity and sharing of information and aspects along those lines. When it can become problematic is when we know that it's associated with an increase in depression and anxiety and feelings of loneliness, particularly among, college age demographics. And it can affect people in different ways. So for some people, it might be about feeling the need for validation or needing to, feel connected with people, which, it's a basic human need for validation and to feel connected with other people. Unfortunately, we know now that social media doesn't replicate that experience in the same way in real life does. So like all behaviors that can become addictive, when the disadvantages start to outweigh the benefits and it's not having so much control over the interface with it.
Well, one of the dangers that I run into when I talk to, anyone, whether it be, adults, kids, teens, college students, whatever you want to put in there, one of the things that I see so commonly is that idea of that self-image takes a hit because there's so much comparison. And, and I've always heard, my parents always said, I've heard a lot of times, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm doing this, but I posted this picture and it got 10 likes, and my friend who was in the picture posted the same picture on theirs and they got 100. And now, well, what am I doing wrong? And the other side of that is that there's a real opportunity for that addicting nature, because there's a fear of missing out. If I'm not on social media, I'm going to miss something. And trends happen so fast, they come and go so fast. And we were in an age like Twitter, especially I use it for sports information, for my sports news, that it's so accessible that if I get news on something at 2:00 this afternoon, by 7:00, it's old news. And if I try and find it at 7:00, sometimes it's really hard to find that. Mm-hmm. And so there's that fear of missing out. I'm not going to be a part of something, or I'm not going to see something, or if I don't post, I'm not going to be a part of the experience. If I don't interact, I'm not going to be part of the experience. And that can lead to a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
That can lead to a lot of sleep issues because you're staying up too late. Instead of following along, instead of sleeping, you're trying to follow along with something, or you're just trying to be involved in something that really is taking away from other experiences. And that can be a real danger as well.
Right. And one of the things that you said that I think is important to address is when you're looking for some information and then you don't find it, right? And what we sort of know in terms of the way it affects our brains is that the dopamine hit actually comes from, thinking about it, planning to go look for that information. And even if you get like a notification that some information, right, is new, that actually gives you a boost of dopamine. Um, and then after that first initial excitement or, effect, rush, your dopamine drops below baseline. And so we as humans feel like we want that information, or we want that, that hit of dopamine even more. So then when you go to look for it and you don't find that information, then you drop even further below baseline. And so it can lead people to, going down that rabbit hole of, seeking for the eternal scroll, or
well, and it really has an opportunity to be dangerous and or a trap with college students, because everything is interrelated. And we talk about balance on almost every episode that we do. We talk about balance. We talk about balance in your sleep schedule. We talked about balance in your study habits. But we know that college is stressful, and we know that higher education is intense, and it's time consuming, and there's a lot of choices to be made. And so there's a lot of times where students will feel that stress and anxiety, and then they go to social media just to have a little break from it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't get that dopamine hit, then it feels unfulfilling. And so now we got to stay longer to try and get it, or we got to try harder to get it, and then something else falls by the wayside. Right. And it's if you don't come into it with a purpose, with an intentionality, then it can really lead you down a path of you find yourself into a bit of a trap and not really sure how to get out of it. Which leads me to the real thing I want to talk about, which is, we talked about some of the negative stuff with social media, but there is positive stuff. Again, if you've listened to this podcast at all over the last few months, I talk about, I have a daughter. She's a senior in high school, and she plays volleyball. And during school season, during the fall, I was constantly on social media posting pictures of her games, posting videos of her games, of highlight reels, because I have family all over the U.S. and friends all over the world who wanted to see how she's doing. They've known her since she was very young, and they were excited to see, which I could not have done without social media. I could not have presented these ideas. And so, again, it's not necessarily a negative. For me, it was a very much a positive during that time. I was very much of an interactive with people. But because I went into it intentionally, what I was going to do with it. I only did certain things at certain times, and that was my focus. And it was all about balance. And that's really the key to everything. So I really want to have you share a little bit about, how do you find that balance? Let's say you're using social media and you find yourself, you're dipping the scales a little bit towards the negative. You're tipping the scales towards it. You're spending a little too much time doing that. It's affecting other parts of your life. You're not sure what to do, or you're not really sure, you haven't seen the signs yet. What are the signs we're looking for? So just to have a little bit of discussion about, what are some of the ways to help maintain balance and to find that balance when it comes to social media? What are some tips that you have?
Yeah. So you can start by doing your own little social experiment with yourself and checking in and maybe rating what you're feeling and how intense you're feeling it before you hop on social media. Just take a pause and check in with yourself and notice how you're feeling. And then when you hop off social media, notice how you're feeling in terms of the intensity, or it could be like a Likert scale of positive or negative feelings, just so you are collecting data for yourself to know, how is this interface affecting me? You could also pause before you hop on social media and get clear with yourself of, what am I needing from this? Are you needing to share something? Are you needing to know what's going on? Are you needing information, so that you can be intentional in making sure that you're getting your need met?
I think a key word there you said was intentional. That's a big part of it, of going into it with an understanding, this is what I'm doing it for. This is my parameters. But if I need to, what are some of the parameters? We talked about it. You in your prep, you put some in there. Some of the specific parameters that students or anyone can use to try and set themselves up for success when it comes to social media.
Yeah. So creating some tech-free zones in your time or in your physical space, so that whether it's around meals or in your bedroom or when you're with certain people, that those are times that you're not going to have tech. And that's something, as kids, having kids, I'm sure that's probably something that we've learned as parents in this era, that that's one of the things that you have to be explicit about. And once the kids know, okay, no tech at the table, they just know not to bring their phones out at the table. Or if not at bedtime, then they know not at bedtime, right? And so students can even come up with pacts with their friends or their roommates or their partners of what the tech-free time is going to be, so that they have, some group, some support around making those changes.
And it's important to understand, if you're listening, we talk about it all the time with every episode, that you're on your own personal journey. You're on your own personal aspect, and what works for your best friend may not work for you. It's about understanding yourself. I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys that are very close in age, but they have different rules for electronics, partly because my youngest is on the autism spectrum, and studies have shown that there's a lot of good things, especially YouTube videos, a lot of apps that really help with kids on the spectrum. My son is mostly nonverbal. It's gotten better because of the videos that we've used. We've seen direct correlation. Now, my other son, he'll just watch just to watch. And so we have to be careful. He doesn't get as much time, but it's very specific what we do with my youngest. And so it's a matter of figuring out what works for you specifically. And there's some trial and error there, especially as new apps come out. Like there's new things coming out that we don't even know how they're going to affect us. 3 years ago, TikTok, yeah, what is that? I mean, when it first came, it was like, yeah, this is not going to fly. This is really dumb. And now, how huge is TikTok, and how is it used in so many different ways? So it's really an intentional coming back to doing that self-evaluation of figuring out what works for you. Now, let's say somebody does have, they're addicted, or they're into a negative cycle, and they're trying to get out of it, and they're just unable to pull themselves out. They just need help. They're on this campus. What do they do? Who do they look to? Where do they go to try and find somebody to talk to about this?
Yeah, students can go to any of the mental health resources on campus, whether it's McKinley Mental Health or Counseling Center. Students are connected with DRES. They have resources there as well. Student health insurance covers almost all therapy services in the community, and it's something that most mental health providers are pretty familiar with and able to address.
And this is not a novelty problem. This is not a unique situation. If someone says, I'm just kind of struggling with this, this is very common. All of us struggle with this at some point, someday. We all sit around around the table and talk about our own personal struggles with social media, the things that we're addicted to, which are different from everybody else. But there's certain, apps that really draw my attention. There's some that I'm like, I don't even care about that. But we live in a world that's electronic. It is. The campus, how you register, how you get discussion boards, how you interact with each other in classes is electronic, more so than ever before. Pros for the good and the not so good sometimes. But it's such a major part of our lives that is so important to, again, come in and be intentional in that. And it does affect our mental health so much. Not just because there's so many things there's so many avenues you can go in social media and topics and groups and ideas, that it really is a whole nother area that we have to be very intentional in. One of the consequences of electronics, of social media, that we may not have been quite as aware of going in, but that we're starting to see, and you'd mentioned it, was that it actually is affecting our ability to hold attention, or some of our ability to retain information. How does social media play into that?
Well, it's interesting because what we know about our brains is very much like our muscles, that you use it or lose it. So since we're relying so much on technology in general, if not social media, to remember things, to figure things out, to know things, we have a limited capacity to be able to do that. And in terms of social media, maybe that's in terms of sustained attention, right? Because it's a quick fix. Scroll, you can get a quick bit of information rather than sustained long-term information. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. And I have conversations around social media on a regular basis with students in the clinical setting. And, sometimes just making very small changes can have a really big impact. It doesn't have to, right? Hardly anybody is advocating for, shutdown of all social media or just to cut out of social media altogether. But some students decide that, their relationship with TikTok isn't healthy, but their interface with Instagram is okay, and what they use Instagram for is okay. And so they make a decision to either limit their time with TikTok or to remove the app, from their devices, and that feels manageable. Or sometimes just cutting back 10 minutes a day or a few minutes a day with, a clear intention to have an improvement on your mental health and your in real life connections with other humans. can make a big impact.
And again, we're not saying that social media is negative. For instance, McKinley has an Instagram. You should follow it. We have a TikTok. You should follow that as well. And like we've even developed an app, the McKinley app, which is now being a part of the Illinois app. But that started with us. And it's not that we're sitting here saying all social media is bad. We've been pushing to pioneer social media to be used in positive ways to influence and help our student body to be the best that they can be, to keep them on the track that gives them the best chance to succeed. And so again, we're not talking that this is negative at all. It's all about how you approach it. It's all about understanding how it affects you, how you can utilize it, and using it to the best that you can, and making it work for you, as opposed to being kind of sucked into some cycles that might have you at its mercy. So, Lauren, thank you so much for coming and sharing today. Again, this is the start of the conversation, but we really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks.
Social media is here. It's here to stay. It's a huge part of our lives, and there's a lot of benefits to it, a ton of benefits to it. But it can turn negative at times, or it can be a little bit, if you get out of balance, it can be a difficult thing. We want to help you get back in balance. And if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want some follow-up, please reach out to us at Healthy Illini, reach out to us at McKinley Counseling Center. We are here to help. Everyone here on this campus wants to help students be in the best position to succeed. And so we really encourage you to do that. Check out our Instagram, check out our TikTok, check out the Illinois app. All these things are social media tools that have positive benefits, that want to help you and give you tools that you need so that you can be the most successful that you can be. But thank you for joining us today. You're on a personal journey no matter where you are in it. You are important and you matter. Your health and wellness are important and matter. And we are here to keep you well to excel. So go have a great week, Illini. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll catch you next time on Healthy Illini.